Hey, I am Laura Militello with Unveil. I'm really happy to be a part of this session on applications and demonstrations. To me, developing applications is one of the most exciting parts of being an NDM researcher. So I have been part of the NDM community for 30 years now. As I'm sure many of you know, one of the strengths of the NDM approach is our commitment to working closely with practitioners to understand the challenges people face in the world of work. With that in mind, I want to introduce you to my business partner, Oliver Smith. Oliver is a U.S. Air Force Combat Rescue Officer. Oliver and I started Unveil in 2016 with our colleagues Steve Wolf and John Hendricks, and it's been a great collaboration. Oliver is actually going to tell you about our NDM application, but before I hand things over, I want to set the stage a little bit. So Unveil is a training, development, and delivery company. We use mixed reality technologies to create recognition skills training for people who have to make decisions in some of the toughest situations. Our training products use the HoloLens headset to project a virtual patient onto any surface. The training was initially designed for combat medics, but we're also getting lots of interest from civilian emergency medicine service organizations, medical schools, hospital sim centers. It's been a really exciting journey so far, and I know we've still got a long way to go, but I'm happy to get a chance to share some of this with you today. But I'm actually going to stop now, and I'm going to turn it over to Oliver, who's going to tell you more about the training we've developed using NDM principles.
Well, thank you, Laura, for the introduction. And I think I would probably echo everyone's appreciation of this conference. It's just blowing my mind how diverse NDM application is, from gaming to medicine to the railroad industry and more. It's really fascinating. But at the same time, I'm so new to it, and these are such new concepts that there's plenty of challenge for me ahead as I work with Laura and Steve and John in developing this product to make the NDM aspect stand out all the more. So just a quick overview of what we have been doing. This is the virtual patient immersive trainer. The idea within the system is to sort of fill the gaps between the training that is currently occurring in tactical combat casualty care. So what happens inside of tactical combat casualty care is really the medical treatment of critically injured patients in these dynamic, high-threat environments. And what you can see here is an image of really kind of a typical work day where we might be in an austere location. We're more often than not outdoors and dealing with the potential for responding to a threat while caring for a patient who has particular injuries that are life-threatening. And so academically and based in the curriculum, it's been broken down into these 5 different stages of treatment, which are massive hemorrhage, airway, respiration, circulation, and then dealing with hypothermia and head to toe. One of the challenges that comes with doing TCCC training is really complex medical problems being presented to students who really have no medical expertise or background in the training at all. TCCC is aimed at both the all service members level as well as the all combatant level. So that could be someone who stays inside the wire and is on the base and dealing with a finance position, or it could be a pilot who perhaps ejects from his aircraft and is now isolated in the field or with his partner in the field, and one of them is injured and they have to take care of themselves, all the way up to the highest level combat paramedics who are doing advanced surgical procedures or using different levels of pharmacological interventions like antibiotics or sedatives to be able to control and manage your patients over a long period of time. Beginning in the classroom, we do work through our Defense Health Agency curriculum and really have a focus on understanding the basics and the didactics, being able to incorporate this new material and develop these new mental models of how the body works, how the body responds to injuries, what the most common injury patterns are, and what interventions we need to do to be able to stabilize the patient in regard to those specific injuries. So we transition from an academic presentation into a hands-on skills practice where we're still in a classroom or a fairly safe setting and working on our assessment practice. We're looking at, more often than not, we begin on a human being. We'll do some quick practice on looking at your partner and getting hands-on and working through an actual finger sweep or a blood sweep, being able to feel the differences in respirations, checking for pulses, these basic level skills. And from there, we start to work with these mannequins. And mannequins are a great training tool. It gives us the opportunity to see some pretty unique injuries. We can practice treating those injuries and continuing to assess our patients. But where the mannequin doesn't necessarily help in the mental model development is the fact that it always looks the same. You see here in the bottom two images and the image of the mannequin on the right-hand side, these are all very static mannequins that they may be technologically advanced in that they can present a pulse, or they have the ability to breathe and ventilate, or they can speak. The mannequin on the right, for example, as well can demonstrate active hemorrhage by squirting out a fluid that represents blood and can be controlled by an intervention. But the problem is that we can't develop our mental models in students beyond asking them to believe or asking them to imagine. And so we're asking them to pull from an unknown database of what a sick patient looks like or what an injured patient really looks like. And so along with Laura and Steve and John, we developed the virtual patient immersive trainer. And we recognize that technology can be used to help complement the current training process and improve the patient's presentation so that these young students can really start to develop their mental models in a way that they were not able to this point. So the BPIT package comes with a tablet that is the instructor's training mechanism. It gives him an opportunity to present scenarios, to change scenarios. And in a virtual setting, when we're not working specifically with a mannequin, he can present the interventions that the student may be requesting based on the injuries that the student is seeing. The student is wearing the Microsoft HoloLens and in real time seeing what the instructor is presenting, and is forced to assess continually and recognize those critical cues that start to change over time. There's no vocal communication required between the instructor and the student, which really allows for the student the freedom of movement to be able to assess the patient in the way that he sees best, but also the instructor can capture and understand how the student is starting to approach this assessment and diagnose the patient, as well as his decision matrix in which interventions are the most appropriate. So here's a close-up that we've provided of our overall instructor interface. We're organized along the same lines that the Defense Health Agency and the Committee on Tactical Combat Casualty Care has delineated TCCC medicine. There are three specific phases: care under fire, when you're actively being shot at or in a high threat environment where you can't provide direct extended care. You're only dealing with massive hemorrhage injuries in that case. And here we've modeled that in stage 1. In stages 2 and 3, we transition to an area where potentially the threat has been contained or reduced, and we can start to get deeper into our actual care of this specific patient. And then stages 4 and 5 continue with that chronological progression of our patient care as we move from the battlefield further away to higher levels of care. And so the instructor, again, can present a variety of mechanisms of injury just by selecting from a prefabricated list, directs his patients through and the students through the different phases of care, and then provides the students, again, that opportunity to, for example, here with this patient, place a tourniquet on the right leg to control that massive hemorrhage. The view that you see here on the top left of the inset, where you're looking underneath the patient's chin from their feet perspective up towards their head, is a real-time view of where the student is actually looking. So the instructor can track and see which of the cues the student has recognized. And all of these cues on our virtual patient are correlated with a collision marker that allows for real-time tracking and a chronological record of the events to be recorded. And that in turn leads into debrief and different opportunities for the instructor to provide higher levels of communication. And so this is an experience that the student may have as they're wearing the HoloLens. In this instance, in the next pictures, we're showing is a virtual only mode where the virtual patient is placed onto a surface, be it the floor or a table, and we can show a mechanism of injury. On the left-hand side, you can see a gunshot wound to the chest with the underlying anatomical structures. What this allows the student to do is to really develop those mental models and understand what physiologically is happening to the heart and to the lungs when someone has been shot in the chest. And why does that cause certain external symptoms, such as the jugular vein distension or the tracheal deviation or an asymmetric rise and fall of the chest? And so presenting these cues back and forth leads to open conversation and the ability to enhance students' understanding. And then students can continue on with actual training where they're going through, doing hands-on assessment, working through their diagnostics, being able to identify the most critical injuries, and then applying the appropriate interventions over time. Now, ultimately, the cue and action pairing is a really critical event for us. There are some approaches of technology that use joysticks to replicate students' control of things that might be found in his med ruck, such as an occlusive dressing, which covers over a gunshot wound, or a tourniquet. We believe that it's really important for the student not only to see those physical cues and to recognize how their patient is trending, but to be able to practice the physical interventions and see what those physical interventions do to improve their patient's outcome. And so here we took the VPIT and the HoloLens down to a special operations training group and allowed them to work with the system in their own gear, in their own training environment. And they could transition back and forth between the virtual patient and the mannequin without any interference to how they naturally operate. So again, this is all so exciting to me, and the things that I'm learning and how we're applying NDM into a combat environment is, I feel very, very fortunate to be a part of the process. And so, Laura, I'll turn it back over to you for any last comments.
I don't have anything else, and we're just about at time here. So thanks, Oliver. Great presentation.